Ladies and gentlemen, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Gaz Williams Show. Hey, I am a musician and a music technologist and a chat show host of sorts. Yes, because tonight we do have a guest, a very illustrious guest, I might add as well. And Mr. Ian Boddy will be joining us. Now, Ian has released many electronic music albums over the years. My goodness, I've been familiar with his since the early 90s, perhaps, so he's very, very prolific, very, very good. And he's going to be sort of playing and demonstrating a few things for us tonight as well. So this is super cool. But Ian also runs DIN, which is one of Britain's kind of premier sort of specialized electronic music labels, with a huge catalogue and an on-running series of compilations called Tone Science. So plenty to talk about with Ian. And of course, Ian, he's been making music since, and releasing music. Light just came on. Has been releasing music since the early 80s. So I'm really interested to talk to him about how to actually get tracks finished, because he's certainly finished lots of them over his career. Anyway, without further ado, let's go and meet him. Ian? Hello? That's not Ian. That was nearly slick. That was nearly slick. There we go.
Oh,
I'm going to get this one day. Hey, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us.
That's great. Thank you very much for asking me on.
I think we first met during a synth fest, didn't we? We did.
Yeah, I think so. The ones in Sheffield.
And you took part in.
I missed it this year. I missed seeing all the friends and colleagues and
it's
bringing some of this gear down and making strange sounds and stuff.
It feels like it's getting better every year, though. The sense of community and just it's really great. It's such a beautiful community that we're all part of. I'm ever so grateful to feel part of something, and such a cool thing. However, we did the 3 big questions, didn't we, for Sonic State, which is an ongoing series. So check that out.
Don't ask me to remember what I said, mind. Just
God. Yeah, but don't ask me to remember what you said either, because
what you asked about.
Anyway, so Ian, I was just talking about how prolific you are over. I've got a light that's going on and off at the moment, so you'll see my face light up and go. I don't know what's going on. I said at the start of the show that you're somebody who's very prolific. And how many albums exactly have you released?
You start off with the easy ones. I don't actually know off the top of my head. Bear in mind, I do production tracks as well, so I've got a batch of those. 40, 50 more. There's also the solo albums. Obviously, I work with the musicians as well, so yeah, go and ask me an easier question. A lot, perhaps. I've done a lot, but I've been doing it for a long time.
Yes.
So,
well, no, but I mean, I think that's context for some of the questions that I want to ask you, because you've just got a brand new album, Axiom. That's
correct.
Was released last week.
Well, actually, officially, its release date is not tomorrow. Today is Wednesday. On Friday this week.
Oh, okay.
The 20th. It's this one here. I've got a little. Actually, I have one by me. There's the CD. There's also a very nice. If I must get this out, a vinyl edition here. I used to have things on vinyl. With a very nice image from my partner Wendy, who sees pictures.
Does she do the artwork on? Does she do the artwork on the DIN stuff?
She does the artwork on some of the DIN stuff. We'll talk about Tone Science. That's Matt Shaw who does those wonderful designs. But Axiom is officially out on Friday, which when I say officially, that means it goes into iTunes and Spotify and all the streaming platforms, and all the record stores who are going to have this in stock would be allowed to sell them. However, of course, we had Bandcamp Friday just not too long ago, so I kind of did a little soft launch through that because that was too good an opportunity to miss.
Hooray for Bandcamp Friday!
Yeah, 3 cheers for Bandcamp.
Yeah.
So there's probably a few individuals out there who've already got their sticky hands on this.
Okay. Well, I've had a sneak preview, and I was I've been finding it really inspiring, actually, because I'm on my own little modular journey that I've been on, certainly my lockdown modular kind of adventures, I haven't really got to the point yet where out of all the noises that I'm making, that I'm actually able to kind of form it into music in a kind of consumable sense. I'm really enjoying it from an exploratory, but so I'm really curious about how you can know when something is right, when you feel that when you're doing a jam that was the right bit, how to edit yourself. Really, these are really difficult decisions that I find, and I'm sure many others find, because you're so prolific and you managed to get tracks finished. Can you give us a few clues as to how you manage that, please?
Okay, well, everyone is different, of course. Everyone's aim is different. Everyone's personality is different. If you compose, doesn't matter what style, doesn't matter if it's all with the electronic gear behind me, whether you play jazz, pop, rock, it doesn't matter. What you're really trying to do is to express something about yourself, how you see the world, how you feel about stuff. So music shouldn't exist in a vacuum. It has to mean something. It should mean something to you. If you're playing around with all this gear and you're feeling bored and you're not really quite sure what you do, maybe it's not the right kind of style for you. Maybe you should be playing some other style, or maybe you should be doing art, or maybe you should be writing a book. If you're a creative person, you will eventually find the what you can express. You'll eventually find the form of art that you can express yourself. I actually used to do art. I used to do screen prints. Before all this happened, I did art at school. I was very good at art. I think you're either good at art or you're not. It's hard to teach art. I mean, you can teach about artists, you can show people techniques, but you either got it or you haven't. And I liked art, but of course, in those days, it was like in the mid 70s, end of the 70s, you go to speak to the people who would advise you about, jobs. Oh, you don't want to do art. No, you don't want to do that. You're never going to make any money out of that. And I was good at biochemistry, is what I actually studied at university, science. I was good at science. So you must do science. You must go and do a degree in science. And I'm like 19 or something. And I'm, yes, okay, sir. I'll go and do a degree in biochemistry. But I continued doing my art. But I felt like I was getting to the end of what I could do with it. I had a few prints and exhibitions and sold a few, and that was all very nice. It was a kind of like an op art kind of thing done on screen prints. And I found a screen printing facility in a place called Spectral Arts Workshop in Newcastle, where I did my degree. And I would go down there in my spare time, and because I just enjoyed it. It was fun. And then somebody said, you do know there's a sound studio upstairs, and you like all those weird German bands like Tangerine Dream. You like all that kind of stuff. You should go upstairs because they got all the kind of weird synths that they use. And I'm like, have they? Oh, I didn't know that. So I literally walked upstairs, walked into this room to be confronted with Revox tape recorders, weird things like the VCS3. And I thought, this looks interesting. And I kind of messed around and somebody showed me a few things of what to do. Now, it may sound like an exaggeration, but literally it was a light bulb going off. Within a month, I'd packed all my screen printing stuff away. This was in 1978, and I've literally never stopped since. So for me, how I express, I sometimes liken what I do to painting pictures and sound. I love the visual. I've never really gone down the route of pop or dance music. It's not really what I do. Nothing wrong with that. It's just not what I do. I think in some ways I paint pictures and sound, and electronic instruments do have a very a visual form to them.
Right.
So that's a long kind of winded way of saying that each person is different and you have to find your own way of how to express something. Now, as opposed to when's the piece finished? Well, it's basically instinct. There is no, it's an art form. There's no rules. I mean, there's musical rules if you want to work in the traditional sense of how you do chords and scales, but really there shouldn't be any rules, and especially with electronic sounds where you can literally do anything.
So instinct then, I mean, I'm just going to cut in there. Instinct, it's interesting you should mention instinct because instinct is something maybe we intellectualize out. You know, the instinct's going, yeah, that's good. But then we kind of maybe feel a certain amount of pressure for things and feel that you have to, that if you did something like in just a jam and you did it in like a couple of hours and like so instinctively go, that's great, then a kind of intellectualizing goes on, which then takes it from the moment and takes it into that dreaded edit infinite trap that we all face.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, instinct you gain it over time. I've done this for a long time. As I
Right.
said, I first started plugging in VCS3s in 1978. Released my first cassette music album on cassette in 1980.
Wow.
I've done it for a long time. So obviously, you just trust your instinct after a while. If you
Yeah.
were starting from scratch, obviously, it takes a while.
I think maybe our self-consciousness kind of argues with the instinct, I think.
Well, I don't think you should over intellectualize these things sometimes.
Right.
Because science, and I said I was good at science, and I like science, and science is about explaining things. It's a search for the truth, and it's about explaining things. And from a biochemical point of view, I can start kind of think, well, your brain works in a certain way and certain patterns, but maybe you don't need to explain it. Sometimes people say, well, why did you choose that sound? And I went, because I thought it sounded cool. And that's enough.
That's enough.
I don't need to explain it. I don't need to understand why I thought that sound was cool. You should know yourself whether it's right or not. I mean, obviously there's a work ethic to all this, and often I think you were talking about kind of inspiration. Sometimes you jam either by yourself or with other musicians, and it's just like, wow, this is great. You record what you're doing, and you listen back, and there's a few little, that's not quite right. And then you try to do it again, and it's not as good. And you try to do it again, and it's not as good.
Right.
And you never quite get to that point you were at that point in time when you did the first jam. But sometimes, you're doing a commercial album, you're putting something out, you have to fine tune things, and then it becomes the boring part. We have to edit, and that's just part of it. But the ideas, where they come from, who the hell knows? I don't know. That just comes when I'm walking along, or just it's people. Another, you're probably going to say, well, somebody asked me, what you inspired by? Well, of course, my roundabout way is everything I've ever done, I've ever seen, I've ever met, I've ever read, everything, coalesces to that moment in time, and I don't want to necessarily understand why you feel a certain way on a certain day and why a certain sound is the right sound, because another day it might not be the right sound.
Yeah, so I mean, Ty Unwin, hi Ty, it's just, he says the answer is simple: don't get hung up on shit, And
that's what I'm saying. If it works, it works. You can't really pin it down, and I think to try to pin it down is not. It doesn't solve anything, or it doesn't add to it. The mystery of, I mean, why is it when you walk through the woods one day and you see the sun sparkling through the trees, it's a beautiful thing? Do you need to understand why the biochemistry of your brain is making you think it's a beautiful thing? Why don't you just accept it's a beautiful thing?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I find with some of my friends regarding synthesizers. My female friends are less interested. I mean, I don't know if this is a sort of gender thing. Certainly would be a personality thing. Are less interested in why that is. They're just kind of interested in, if you move that up there, it makes that really funky thing that goes wah, wah, wah. And when you pull it that way, it's cool. So when you're playing a line, so thinking about it in terms.
Well, here's another thing. There is actually quite recently, there's quite a number of female composers working with the modular gear, which is wonderful. And they've all got different viewpoints, and they've all got their own personalities, and they all bring, so everyone who works with any form of music, it's about your personality. You're trying to express your personality.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to finish that point though, just because I feel like I started the point. It was just that when you get hung up on why something is, I think I'm definitely guilty of this myself, and overthinking it, and rather than rather than what does it make you feel from an emotional response, rather than it having to think it all through. And my friends who I was talking about, who are less concerned with the technical details, they are much more prolific as musicians and really brilliant musicians. Angie Pollock, amazing. She's a great example. Put her on an MS-20 and she'll sound absolutely incredible. She would just...
Well, here's the thing. If you're a painter, do you need to know the chemical composition of your paint?
Right,
or
there
do
you
just
go.
Put some red and blue on the can. I mean, you might be surprised though. I got no idea how this gear works. When I say that, I mean the actual electronic components.
Right.
Put a soldering iron in my hand and I won't know which end to hold. Although
I'm the same.
Find out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I don't actually know how to build the gear. It's the analogy I make is I'm not a car bloke. I've got no idea how the engine of the car works. I just want to get in and drive somewhere. And to me, as long as I go somewhere nice, that's great. So as long as I can use all this gear to take me in a musical way somewhere nice, I don't need to know how the electrons actually go through the circuits. Obviously, I know how filters and envelopes and VCAs work. I've learned that over the years. But it's where it takes you. You don't have to know. If you think too much about these things, it gets in the way of just this flow. And I find sometimes when you are feeling inspired and you are having one of those days where it's just going just spot on, I'm almost not thinking. I'm almost just like this, and I record things really quick. And sometimes later I listen back, I think, it's a little bit there. And I'm getting to the point now, I'll leave it. Unless it's a glaring mistake or a technical thing that shouldn't be there, I'll leave it. If it's a slight, I mean, one of the beauty costs of this stuff, if it's the oscillators are slightly out of tune, it actually sounds better than if they're all perfectly in tune.
Yeah, and that feels like a bit of a reflection of nature, doesn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, nature's not perfect. You go out, it's dirty, it's messy, there's stuff all over the place. Perfection isn't, art should never really be a pursuit of perfection, in my opinion. Something that's absolutely perfect is a bit stale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think
it's human beings, we're certainly not perfect. So if it's a reflection of us and our personalities, neither should our art be perfect.
There's a funny thing as well, I think, that to do with perfectionism, that if you listen to a track, a commercial track that you know really, really well, but you listen to it with the person who made it, and you're listening back, and there's some kind of noise, and they go, "Oh, that noise," and they go, "Oh, that was a mistake," and you go, "No," because I didn't know it was a mistake. You think that everything is deliberate and meant to be there from a listening point of view. So the listener isn't like a kind of school teacher who's kind of waiting to kind of judge you and look for mistakes. We kind of sometimes think that that's how our music's going to be absorbed, in this incredibly over analytical way that the listener is going, are they cheating in any way?
I don't think the other thing I've learned over the years is once you've released something and put it out into the world, it's no longer yours.
Yeah, it belongs to the universe.
You can't control how people will have listened to it. They might sit down like the old days and listen to the album, the whole thing through, or they might be sharing it with a friend walking down the road with one headphone in piece on an iPhone, or they might be having on in the background when they do something else, like cook food. You can't control it, and whatever that piece meant to me doesn't necessarily mean that's going to mean something to somebody else. So I might have crafted this piece and it means a specific thing to me, and somebody else might come up with a completely different interpretation. There's no point in me getting upset about that. It's just once it goes out into the world, it's no longer yours. It belongs to whoever whoever listens to it.
Right. So I remember one time on tour near Cologne, I was listening to some Cluster, I think it was, or Harmonia,
all right, cool.
or Harmonia, and I was listening. I was feeling it was all relevant to where I was, and looking out the window and listening to that music, feeling really happy because the tour was going well. And but now every time I hear that music, it's so evocative. I mean, in fact, that whole period, I was just listening to these albums over and over and over. Sort of Rodelius and Mobius.
Good stuff.
Just fabulous things. I wish I'd have got into that a lot earlier. But the reason I was saying that, though, is when I listen to that now, then it transports me to that place. It transports me to the looking across the German countryside. I know that sounds a bit of a cliche because it's German music, but that's what it means to me, and it's mine. That's my relationship. It's mine. Yeah.
Music at its fundamental should mean something to you, whether you actually compose it or whether you listen to it. It's a form of communication, but it's a weirdly abstract form. It's a very inexact form of communication, yet strangely combinations of sounds in various ways and pitches and tones and timbres can have these incredibly emotional effects on people. And let's not try and explain again. Maybe it's just, you can sit down and intellectualize it all, but it's a more wonderful not to know. It just is a wonderful thing.
So moving on to playing live now, obviously this is something other than doing cyber gigs. You've done many live performances over the years, including playing in all sorts of different kind of environments like churches and this
planetariums,
right?
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious about that. About when you were approaching those performances, how much were you letting the environment influence your musical decisions?
It varies. It depends on the kind of gig as well. I mean, if I'm doing I don't do huge gigs. I'm not that well known. But if I'm playing to an audience at one of the festivals, maybe 300 or 400 people who are all sitting down, and it's a more structured form of gig where I have to kind of sort of reproduce what I do on an album. So I'm kind of forced to have backing tracks on Ableton Live, and then I kind of play things over the top, but it's kind of a bit more flexible than that. But that's a kind of gig which is the performance is governed not by the venue so much, but more by the audience's expectation of what I should be doing. If I'm doing a one-off strange little gig in my little local record store, which is Sound It Out Records in Stockton, I did a couple of installs for them. I just took the modular gear and I just basically made it up on the spot. It was some bits worked and some bits didn't, but it was a really kind of vibe on the spot kind of thing. Planetariums are great, obviously. The acoustic-wise, they are awful. They you try not to use a hi-hat because it slaps back from the back of the door when you hear all the way through, and of course it's out of time. But of course, if you're going to have these spacey projections, it's nice to have kind of cosmic kind of spacey things. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown, I was going to do a really interesting gig in a Victorian tunnel in Newcastle in the dark. Wow. I had prepared some really kind of darky, kind of scary kind of things for that, and I'd recorded some field recordings actually in the tunnel beforehand, but unfortunately that didn't go ahead. So maybe if once things improve, that will happen. So that's certainly an environment which would have informed what I do. Wow. So you see, keep asking me these questions, but there's no simple answer because it just depends.
Right.
It depends on the audience size, what the audience expectations are. It also depends on the environment you play as well. I don't do always the same gig.
I mean, I think you're saying it there, though. I mean, obviously with hi-hats and the legato effect that you'll get by playing in a very reverberant place will influence you not doing.
Well, playing in a church is a beautiful thing, and you get a lovely reverb in the church. So you tend not to have a pounding bass drum going because it'll just turn into a mush. But now and again, it's nice to have some kind of drums going. It's just part of the vibe. You're never going to get a perfect sound. I always like to play quite loud as well. I always ask for the PA to be louder than the PA guys normally want to have, but I quite like things loud live. Again, that has an emotion. It has an emotional impact being loud.
Right, that's interesting, and also the dynamic range that you can take things down quite quiet to have the sweep to really enjoy that. Yeah, great. So in terms of career highlights, then, you've many albums and many things that you've achieved so far. Let's talk about some of what you'd consider kind of real kind of highlights for you. just
Gosh.
personal things that you feel really, really pleased about?
That's an interesting question. I'm not, I get asked lots of questions. I'm not sure if anybody's ever asked me that. Seriously, I don't think anybody's ever
Oh,
highlighted.
righty.
Right.
Original
Oh,
questions on the Gaz Williams show.
Yeah, good man. When I first started out playing live, I was nervous. I mean, terrified. So nervous, I would physically be sick before I started to play live. And this is just these little concerts in Spectral Arts Workshop using the VCS 3s and tape delays. I would be that nervous. I would literally shake. But I wanted to do it. I forced myself to get over that thing. So there was these things called the UK Electronicas in the 80s and into the 90s, which were the sort of, in the style of electronic music that I do, there was these reasonably big festivals. And I think the first one was in Milton Keynes, which is a long way from the northeast of England where I lived. And I had never played outside the northeast of England before. And I got asked to play at the very first
in Milton
UK
Keynes.
Electronica in Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes is a strange town, though, isn't it?
Because it's like I couldn't even drive. I didn't even have a car. So Paul Nagel, who I think you probably know, he offered to drive my gear down there because he was performing as well. But he lives in Preston and I live in Newcastle. And when I said to him, I live in Newcastle, I think he thought I meant Newcastle under Lyme, which was kind of on the way to Milton Keynes for him until he suddenly found out it was Newcastle upon Tyne. Yeah. So he actually had to drive my gear down and I kind of took the train down and hope he arrived, which he did eventually. But that was a kind of highlight because it was me breaking away from just playing in the Northeast. And the next highlight I'll choose is in Holland. There's been festivals in the Holland for quite a few years. Yeah. And it used to be called Klemdag. It's now run by Groove, E-Day and E-Live. And it's probably the biggest audience I've ever played in. I think Suzanne Ciani was the main act and I was actually the support.
Wow.
And I remember coming out on stage and there was 1,300 people in there, quite a big hall. And I just remember standing there going, that's quite a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
And I just got on with the gig, but that was a nice size of audience to play to. Yeah. I mean, world famous bands who play in tens of thousands of people. In the greatest world in the world, I'm never going to do that kind of size of audience because obviously what I do is quite niche. But playing abroad and playing to that kind of size audience, that was pretty cool. That was 93.
Mm-hmm. And playing with a legend like Suzanne as well.
Yes, it was very nice. It was, I remember she was having some problems with a keyboard. I think it was a Korg or something, but in the dressing room there was a bit of a panic over one of her keyboards. And this was the days where she played more she played an acoustic piano and had keyboards on top. She wasn't touring them with a buckler and stuff. That's more of a, she's gone back to her roots effectively, and it's wonderful to hear. The next one I'll try not to choose too many, so maybe this should be the last one.
I love it. This is
2000,
great.
I got asked to go to the States. Philadelphia, there's a really good scene in Philadelphia. There's a guy called Chuck Van Zyl who runs a radio show called Stars End there, which plays this kind of music every Saturday night for about 5 hours in the middle of the night. And he does a show called The Gatherings. And he selfishly has done this for a long time. He gets artists from all over the world. It's in a church. It's not a huge audience, 150, maybe 200 tops. But it's a lovely crowd. And I got asked to go to the States. And rather foolishly, Philadelphia, I thought, I'll go in May. Oh, it was hot. It was red hot, which slightly took the shine off things. But playing, obviously, in the States, and I've been back a few times since. In fact, a couple of years ago, when the Altair album, I think you mentioned you had to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was performed over there. So playing it, and that was quite a big deal, going over to the States. So in terms of playing live, there's three.
Lovely. No, it's great. Because it's it must be quite interesting for someone like yourself who's been playing with modular synths for 40 years. Is that right?
42 years ago, I turned on the VCS 3 for the first time.
Okay, let's take it from
the
VCS 3.
I had to find out how you turn it on, and then somebody showed me how to put the pins in. So probably 42 years ago since I actually turned the VCS 3 on.
So all of the fashions, all of the new equipment that's come and gone, and all of the things that's happened, you've been there and witnessing all of this and being part of that, and then obviously seeing the growth of Eurorack. Are you surprised by just how big and how much interest there is in modular synthesis these days?
I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I do have a wry smile on my face. I bought my
Right.
I bought my first modular. The VCS3s I used to use in Spectra weren't mine. They were just in the studio. My first modular was a Roland System 100M. In fact, it was you can probably see the 3 racks of 5.
Yeah.
It was one of those racks I bought in 1982.
Wow.
And I still have it. I still use it, and it still sounds
So
great.
Oh my goodness. So the rack behind you then is
It's one. I've moved them up, but you see, there's 3 racks of 5. The
okay.
100M came in 2 kinds of cases. One case would hold 3 modules, and the other case would hold 5. And I bought a rack of 5, and on the other side of my studio, which you can't see from the camera, is the 4-note polyphonic keyboard, which is wonderful. In that you've got 4 CB gates out, and I've got 4 voices. I can actually play the 100M polyphonically.
Oh yeah.
And I bought that in 1982, and I still use it. And then, of course, the 1980s arrived. I was one of the first to get a DX7. I thought a DX7 was great. I could program the sound. It's a wonderful synth. But obviously, it's almost the opposite of what the analog things are.
Mm-hmm.
And then toward the end of the 80s, into the 90s, you could basically find these things in skips. I'm going to really make everybody fed up now, because
Okay.
that VCS3 behind me.
Show us this.
Before.
Yeah, can we hear it? Can we hear it?
I'll just put it through the speaker.
Yeah, okay. And then because this, so we can get some classic VCS3 to build up to the story.
There you are.
Yeah, there we go. We got it.
Again, it was about 93. I worked for Akai for quite a while.
Uh-huh.
From 1990 to 2002, I worked for Akai, which was a really nice job.
Mm-hmm.
And I toured about, and I drove into a shop. Or I didn't drive. I walked into a shop, and he was his VCS3, and the guy said, "You know all about this kind of stuff. I've got no idea how to sell this. It's got a keyboard. Would you take £350?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." I won't tell you how much it's worth now, but it's worth a little bit more than that.
Oh,
but
holy moly. That's amazing.
I wouldn't sell it because I mean, that's obviously just a funny little sound I got going there, but it has a personality, it has a quality that nothing else has.
Right.
And then, of course, you could literally get these things for next to nothing. And then Dope came along with the A100 system and analog systems.
Yeah.
As well, I've got some of their stuff above the surge, and suddenly that was okay. And then about 7-8 years ago, it just went woof. Wow. And I think it's great. I think it gives lots of people who don't have a lot of money a route into these things. You don't have to, because it is expensive.
Yeah.
You know, once you start buying one module and your bank balance, but you get relatively good systems now. And again, everyone's got their own little system, and it's an expression of their personality again.
Right.
And there's loads more people playing it, and there's loads more activity, and I think it's great. But it does make me smile.
Well, the great Richard Nichols said to me how at the beginning of my modular journey, I mean, and I am still very much at the beginning, but at the absolute beginning, he was going, "Hey guys, the great thing is you can make whatever synth you want. You can just." But the thing was, I was kind of not entirely sure what synth I actually wanted until I started putting a few modules together, and now it's all starting to form, form into something. I mean, I know it's only the beginning of that experience, but I'm finding that very compelling and very exciting, but. It wasn't until I had to engage with it did I start to actually feel a draw. I'm actually very drawn to it now. Initially, I was almost not being bullied into it, but being drawn into it, like this. And now I'm like this and looking at things.
There's a lot to learn. And one of the things I will say is don't buy too much too quick.
That's what I've
Um,
done.
yeah,
Yeah.
you need to actually. It's to me, people have various names for these things.
Yeah.
Toys. It's an instrument. It's just as valid an instrument as anything else. You wouldn't buy a violin and then 5 minutes later go, oh, I don't like the violin. I'm going to play something else now.
Mm.
I'll play the trombone next. Oh, I'll buy a
Mm.
trombone. Oh, I don't like this. Like you have to learn how to use these things, and it does take time, and it does take experimentation. And there's no rules. You can just do what you want, and just give yourself a little bit of time. And the Rolling System 100M looks complicated, but it's really not.
Mhm.
It's very straightforward subtractive synthesis. The VCS3 looks kind of weird, but it's actually quite a simple thing, although the way you patch it up, you can get some quite extraordinary results. This isn't a problem, but some of the modules you can now buy are the computers, basically.
Yeah.
They've got screens, there's menus.
Yeah.
The instruction manual starts to become several hundred pages long.
Yep.
It starts to become quite a complex thing, which you're not going to learn in one night.
Yes.
Some modules are really dead straightforward. There's just picking one off the top of my head. I've got the Q-bit tone here. There's four filters, 4 inputs. You can have a band pass, a low pass, a response, I can learn that in 10 seconds. I know what it's going to do. It's dead straightforward. Other modules I've got screens, and I've got I recently bought the 1010 micro bit box. That's going to take a lot longer to learn because it does a lot more. It's a lot more complex, and I'm not making any comparison saying one's better than the other because they do different things. But I'm just saying some of the modules are getting quite complex, and you do need to give yourself time to learn these things, and not just buy something and then 5 minutes later say, "Oh, I don't like that. I'll get something else." That's not really good.
No, this is great advice. I think, though, certainly in my case, once I'd started to accumulate a few modules, I started to kind of think about like a channel, like a thing that I wanted the modules to kind of fit into. So I started to look at buying modules that would accommodate this kind of pathway.
It's good to have a goal.
Well, but in this thing, what do I discover though? Is I discover that the mixers in the Eurorack format are not. There's some good ones, but modular manufacturers, get in touch with me. I tell you what, we could make a kick-ass mixer if we collaborated. Because I swear, I've looked through everything now. I think this is the thing. This is the thing why I was really trying not to get into modulars, because I knew there's just so many thousands and thousands of products out there. But I've been really focused on mixers, and perhaps just because I do like real mixing desks and lots of auxiliary sends and that kind of thing. It just seems like anyway, sorry, I digress. I digress. That's my little mixer story.
A mixer, a modular, that's not the first thing I would buy. If you've got a little external mixer, you can also run things out to an external mixer. You should have a musical goal in mind. Now, what could that be? If you want to play melodic stuff, obviously you're going to need something to control the pitches. Hopefully you want to control them in time. So you think there's oscillators there. You might have to get a quantizer because you might want, don't you want it to be in tune, or do you want to do weird, far out, spacey kind of weird shit, In which case you might not need a quantizer. You might not even need an oscillator.
Getting away from quantized is quite good for people as well, isn't it? Because
I use them both. It also depends on. For example, I don't know whether you can really see this, but the make noise rack down here, which is the 7U rack. That is my main simple live rig that I can take on a plane or whatever. Or if I can do a small gig just with that. So part of the design for that, from my point of view, wasn't necessarily the music I was going to play. I knew what I was going to do, but what modules would fit into a relatively small space. The Anywhere rack, I call it, this little one over here, which some people who maybe watch my videos have seen, that is powered by a USB brick. So I've got
Neat.
the polyend
Oh, the
Anywhere.
polyend anywhere. Hurrah!
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Great. So I can actually take that out and about. Now that's an even smaller space. So part of the considerations, of course, was what you're going to get into a small space. Things like the distings are great for that because you can stick them in there. They don't take up much space and they'll do anything you want just about.
Gosh, yeah.
So there's a couple of things. There's what your musical goals are. There's what the size of your rack is. Are you going to take it out? Are you going to leave it in a studio? But it just takes time. You're not going to suddenly know how to work with modular in 6 months.
No.
It's going to take a bit longer.
I've been at it for 6 months. So I'm at the 6 month stage.
You might have done some interesting things. The other thing is just record it. Just record. Just have sometimes what I do is I have days where I've got a lot of admin to do with the business I run the DIN record, so I'll have an admin day. It's not a creative day, it's an admin day. Another day might be a programming day. I might program sounds, get patches going, but it's always good some days just to say, right, this is a creative recording day. I'm going to record everything I do today. It doesn't matter how bad or good I think it is at the time, just record the whole lot. And then sit back later on, take feedback and just listen to it again. Think, that works. Maybe that doesn't work. Just to assess what you've done. So it's always good to the actual playing part. Don't start changing your modules around in the middle of doing a creative session. You'll just kill it dead.
Yes.
Kill it. Oh, you bad boy. You've been a bad boy, haven't you? No, you don't do it.
Right. Okay. Right. I'm learning. Yes. Okay.
If you were going to drive to a nice forest in somewhere and go for a walk, you wouldn't start washing your car and hoovering your car out because the sun might go down by the time you get to where you're going. Just go and just record that. Just play. Just play. And if things are slightly out of tune or whatever, it doesn't matter. Just play.
Yeah, I think that is great advice. And actually, I have set things up in my studio. I've been doing. I've been whittering on about this on my show for a number of weeks, but rearranging things, and I've been setting up like a jamming state, so like a jam zone. So once lockdown permits, we're going to be having like little two people like little jamathons here. And actually this is going to lead me to the next question. So one of the things I'm interested in this jam zone is when you've got two people who have got an array of instruments, drum machines, samplers, synthesizers, modular at their disposal. Each one of those things can be a full sonic palette. I'm really interested in how to jam. I'm a big jammer. That's my love in life, is jamming with other musicians. It's my deepest and most loved thing. So I realized that a lot of the electronic stuff that I've been doing has been kind of relatively solitary stuff. So I'm really, really interested, and I've created this thing in my studio to explore this, how to jam meaningfully with another person. Now, I know that you've made many collaborations with Nigel Mulaney and as an example.
Mark Shreve, Marcus Ryder, quite a few people.
Right. So the point I was just talking about there then, when you're working in a collaboration, I guess, and this is all going to be case by case, but how would you go about making sure that what you do doesn't overwhelm the situation? Because given how easy it is to do that,
you listen. It's the same as any other style. You play bass. When you play with other guys, like a band, you play what is it rock or jazz, or what kind of bass do you play?
Rock and roll, prog, funk.
Yeah, fine, good man.
Experimental.
If you play with another group of people, the most important thing sometimes is not to play, to listen to what the other person is doing.
Absolutely.
Obviously, if you're playing live, that can be sometimes when you're playing live, you're just like, you're a bit nervous and you kind of do things. But if you're in a kind of cool space and you're just doing it for yourselves, let the other person play for a bit and just have a listen to what they're doing, and hopefully they'll do the same. Have the same respect for yourself. Nigel, you mentioned we work extremely well. There's almost like a telepathic thing going on there, and he'll do something, and I'll just we'll do this. And again, it goes back to instinct. I can't write this down saying number one, you do this, number two. Certainly, I think to listen to the other person and not to fill up all the gaps. That's the other one. That famous engineer, fill up all the gaps. You mustn't do that.
I can be guilty of that. Yeah.
Space, leaving space is often really good. In electronic music, often you've got ambient drones and big washes of reverb. I'm as much a do this as anybody. Sometimes it's nice just to leave a little gap, a silence. It's quite hard. It's quite hard to have the discipline to do that.
Yeah, so that's discipline. But you're right, though. Listen and to be really present with the person and to It's
nice to face each other. Nigel and I did a gig in Liverpool. Gosh, it wasn't this year, of course. It was last year, and we set the two tables, all the modules, so we actually faced each other.
That's how I've done it. That's how I've done it. I've got player A and player B, and they're looking at each other.
You can look at each other.
Fantastic.
Because if you can also make faces that try and make the person laugh, of course. Right. But
So you did it at a gig with Nigel, and you were looking.
And I look at him, and he go, and it's kind of cool. And I got that Ons Morto French Connection keyboard, which you can probably just see behind my shoulder, playing a bit of that, and then he played the Moog, and it was like, it was just great.
Yeah, we can just see that. Okay. Let's go back here. So moving forward then, and like obviously this blooming lockdown, on it goes. Are you thinking of doing more than live performances? Is that something?
Well, obviously, all my live gigs this year have gone. 6 or 7, I think I had planned, so I lost all those. It's given me a little bit more time to spend in the studio, a bit more time with Din, getting more releases together. Lots of people are doing streaming concerts. I've not done one yet. I have been thinking about it. But I want to make sure I do it right. I've just noticed that Bandcamp have recently announced that they're going to support ticketed streaming events. Now, I think that's really good because, again, free cheers for Bandcamp.
Yes. And
they don't take much commission. It's 10%. I mean, goodness me, that's fair, and that's more than fair.
It's amazing.
And the infrastructure that Bandcamp have created, this environment where, everybody from just, somebody who's only going to sell 2 or 3 of something.
Right.
Doesn't matter. They've got a way of, they've got a platform which is professional, which they can put their stuff out on, and people can have a listen to that and follow them. And it's a really good infrastructure.
Yes.
So I'll have a serious think. I'll have a serious look at the streaming thing on Bandcamp, and I'll probably pick your brains and have a think.
Well, I mean, it's great though, this Bandcamp thing, just in that at this point in time, it feels like out of the big tech companies, no one's quite seized that platform for streaming concerts. And Bandcamp, as the supporters of Bandcamp are often the musicians themselves. Everyone I know loves Bandcamp, thinks it's kind of politically spot on with its, everything it does, the Bandcamp Fridays and all of the things that it does. So there's a lot of support for Bandcamp in general. So that platform becoming the place where you go to see live streams could actually, it could be the one. It would get my blessing, I know, and I know.
What I wanted to avoid was, I've seen several people on Facebook doing live streams, and what it seems to boil down to is some guy with his back to the camera,
right,
suddenly going, "Is it working? Is it?" And then they go, It's like it's just a bit,
Yes.
Not good. So I wanted to, if I'm going to do it, I need to set it up so it's right.
Yeah.
And this Bandcamp thing does sound, putting it on Facebook, I mean, Facebook is what it is.
Doing it right though, it's going to involve the full entry with the cape and the smoke and the lights and the That's
And
what I'm
that
assuming
dog,
you
the
meaning.
dog run past and the cat sat and took the synthesizers. Yeah, well, so we'll. I'm not going to promise anything because I'll need to really look into it and do it right. Plus, I'm very busy running Din at the moment.
I bet.
I spent a lot more time with Din this year, and it seems to be paying off. Certainly, Axiom's been well received.
Mm.
So I've got other things in the pipeline as well.
So let's
And
let's talk about Din then. So
why
1993,
not?
is that the first release on Din?
Oh no, you fool!
No,
It's the 64th physical release on Din, as well as 25 digital albums and 4 Tone Signs albums.
that's fine.
I said Din in 1999, so it's 21 years now.
Right. Wow.
So quite a while.
Yes. Gosh. Now, how many artists have you released? I know Scanner, for instance, and
Yes, Robin, that's kind of where I've gone. Well, Scanner's album, there you are.
ah,
Another cover
aha.
by my partner Wendy, another lovely cover.
Oh wow,
Robin, that was a nice little story actually with Robin,
Mhm.
who I knew, and obviously the lockdown we've talked about it came into effect, and Robin was one of the first guys who does it right, and he went online. I don't know if I remember the performance. I think it was way back in March. He did a YouTube live streaming performance from his lovely studio with all those lovely instruments he has, and it was well attended and lots of people looked at it. And Robin does lots of styles of music. Not let's be fair, not all of it is Din friendly. Some is going to be quite avant-garde or quite unusual. Hope he doesn't mind me saying that. I'm sure he doesn't. And I watched this live set and I thought, that's really good. I really like that. That's great. So I literally emailed Robin the same night and said, Robin, that set was a really good set. If you did something like that, I'm sure we could put that out in Din. And he went, that's a good idea. I'm going to leave the setup that I've used for this YouTube stream. And over the next week, he sent me almost 90 minutes worth of tracks improvised, some with beats, some with Morphogene doing those wonderful things and sampled voices that he's well known for. I curated out of that a 60-minute album, which he agreed with my track selection.
Wow.
And literally within 2 weeks, the album was ready to go.
What about
That's
that?
the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. Yeah. Right.
He's a professional.
So
anyhow, yes, Robin's out there. So
yeah.
there's a whole load of artists on Din. If you don't mind me saying so, if people go to dinrecords.bandcamp.com, you'll see all the discs and releases and vinyl albums, and even the prints. We're starting to sell some of the cover prints now, which is a nice thing to do. So it's all on there. It's a nice little
and
get your pennies out.
Just touching briefly back onto the Bandcamp thing just for a moment though. Bandcamp though is the platform that you would like to be that is the home of Din. That's the because you can stream it through Spotify too and through Apple Music.
You can stream it through Spotify. You can stream it through iTunes and Amazon. You can buy it from record stores. I've got proper distribution. I mean, I do have thoughts on this because a lot of people bash Spotify, and there's some aspects of it which isn't very. It leaves a bad taste in the mouth. The worst thing about Spotify is the fact that if you, as Gaz Williams, paid your £10, say you paid Spotify the £10 fee a month, and all you listened to in that month was just my stuff, I wouldn't get that £10.
Yeah.
That £10 would go into the big pot, which the big famous musicians get most of. I would get a tiny fraction of that. If Spotify overnight said, okay, the money that Gaz Williams paid on his account will be shared out amongst the artists who he's listened to this month, I think a lot more people would support Spotify.
Yeah.
But I believe in giving the end user the choice. If somebody chooses to listen to my music on Spotify, it's not up to me to tell them that they can't. If I want to put my music on Spotify, I could not put my music on Spotify. But if I make music on Spotify, it's not up to, if people want to hear my music or anybody else's music on Spotify, that's fine. It's actually up to them. And I do know for a fact some people who've listened to my stuff on Spotify have then gone on to buy physical CD. But by and large, I think most of the users aren't that fussed about buying physical product.
Yeah.
Whether that's right or wrong is not for me to say. If that's the way they want to listen to it in the modern day world, that's up to them.
It's
But I do think the streaming platforms could make it more fairer by actually making the money that individuals pay for their subscription fee go to the people who they actually listen to, not into a central pot. Obviously, it's probably a little more difficult to work that out, but surely it's not beyond the wit of man to actually figure this some system where this could be done.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You know, the small record label, the small indie label, 50 sales to that label is huge. Is really important.
Yeah.
But as soon as those audience aren't buying from that little label and they're relying on Spotify, those few listens, those 50 equivalent listens, is just piffle. So I think that's.
Well, I mean, sometimes some different people have got different reasons for consuming music in different ways. Consuming's a horrible word to use with music,
Yeah.
but often on things like Spotify and Apple Tunes, iTunes, it is a bit like that, because people listen to playlists based on how they feel that day, not necessarily listen to a specific piece of music by a specific artist.
Yeah.
Is why would a person go onto Bandcamp and pay £7 or whatever for a digital download of mine when they can listen to it on Spotify for free? And the answer is probably because the person on Bandcamp actually cares about the artist who they listen to, and they actually want to physically support them. So they're happy to pay £7. In fact, often on Bandcamp you have this thing called name your price, or you allow somebody to pay more, and quite often somebody will just put more in the pot. It's great. Why should they do that?
Yeah. No, that's. I mean,
it's wonderful.
yeah.
It's wonderful, and I'm sure I don't speak for myself. I'm sure I speak for a lot of the independent artists and labels out there.
Yeah.
It makes what you're doing seem more worthwhile when people support you directly like that.
Yeah, it really does. Yes, great. So I mean, so with Din Records, then, is it, do you keep everything in print, so to speak, or is
No.
that no? Okay,
They are limited. I couldn't. It's I would need a bigger house, and this. I like the limited edition.
Yeah.
Ethos. So, for example, on Axiom, there's 500 CDs. On vinyl, there's 250. Once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah. Nice.
Obviously, the digital keep going.
Yeah.
Tone Science albums, the CDs, there's 500 of each, and once they're gone, they're gone. And I think that's fair. It's fair enough, because it becomes, I often get people saying, "Oh, I wish you would reprint that," and I would buy it, and I would say, "Yeah, I'm sure you would buy it, but I would need to sell another 200 or 300 to make it worthwhile, and I couldn't guarantee that would happen." But I quite like the limited edition thing.
Yeah.
I think it makes it more special.
I agree.
And I don't see why things should be in unlimited amounts. That I think it makes it more of a artisan kind of unique thing.
Well, I've got a couple of Din releases here and CDs, and they are beautifully packaged. So they are objects that are covetable and things that are nice to.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking. Let me just, if you don't mind, you know Matt Shaw, Matthew Shaw.
I'm not sure if I do.
He often helps with Ben Div.
Oh yeah, yes I do.
When they do the lead modular meet.
Yeah.
So the Tone Science, I wanted a different look. It's a sub label to Din, which specializes in really giving a spotlight to musicians who work with modular synths in all their forms, from people who do crazy weird stuff to people who almost write soundtracks with it. And we came up with this lovely design style. That's number one.
Let's just hang on. Hold that one. Hold number one up again. Sorry.
Yeah, number one. There's number two.
Yeah.
I'm going to be hard to do number 3 and 4 at the same time. There's number 3 and number 4. So they've got this sort of retro 1950s math science textbook Victor Vasarely kind of vibe, which fits in perfectly with this kind of style of music.
Yeah.
But it was important for me. Remember at the beginning of our conversation, I told you how I used to be into art. And I used to do art. I love art. I love going to art galleries and seeing art, and I wanted it to have a look. I wanted Din to have a look. I wanted to have an aesthetic style. There's no covers of Din with spaceships and sci-fi and planets and all those kind of, those kind of cliched kind of covers. I go more for the abstract. The Axiom cover, this beautiful image that Wendy took, which is, you can't really see the subtlety with the reflection there, but it's quite an enigmatic image. You're not quite sure. Is it a painting? Is it a photograph? What is it? I quite like that abstract, enigmatic, not telling you exactly what it's about.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that reflects the music in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah,
there isn't a lyric, there isn't like a sort of a definite narrative. It is a more.
No, I mean the titles, I often go for one-word titles, and I usually try to be sort of fairly ambiguous. I think an earlier thing we talked about when I said once an album or a music goes out into the world, it's no longer yours, because an end user might think something completely different from you, and you mustn't get upset about that. That's their interpretation.
Right.
So I'm not going to call a track, the car park by Tesco's on the end of the M1 kind of really specific. I tend not to go for those titles. I tend to go for more one word or poetic or open-ended kind of titles.
Yeah, nice. So I was just wondering about the concept of narrative there, and I was thinking how, like maybe kind of typical song form with a intro, verse, chorus, middle eight, chorus, and you're out or whatever. One of the great things with electronic music, and would you describe Din as an ambient music label? Ambient
is very not overused, but misused term. There's plenty of rhythms. In fact, most of the albums are rhythmic based.
Right.
But there's also it's electronica, perhaps. Bits of ambient, bits of synthwave. It's people will have to go. I hate genres, subgenres. They're all very strange. But it's not really an ambient label. Not ambient as in the Brian music for airports kind of ambient, which is the real. It's not like that. But it does have quiet sections, and there's a couple of albums which don't have a lot of rhythms on. Some of Robin's albums, kind of, you could certainly call those ambient tracks, but there's other tracks where there's busy little rhythms and mechanical kind of modular things going on. There's certainly a lot of the visual. I keep going about the visual, the cinematic style. Some of it borders on prog. Some of it has more of a, you know what I mean by the Berlin school. The Tangerine Dream, big move sequences. There's a lot. Some of the albums have got that on. Say the stuff I do with Mark Shriver's under the name of Arc and the Node album. That's very much in that kind of vibe. And so there's a huge range of things there. I wouldn't want to put out just the same stuff. And even the Tone Science albums, there's a massive range from purely abstract, legato, spacey kind of stuff. In fact, the very first track on the very first Tone Science album, Div Kid Ben's track's very kind of open-ended. And there's other tracks that are the full-on Berlin school stuff. There's other stuff which is really distorted and all overdriven. There's a whole range of stuff there.
So I was just going to ask about this thing about like song form and this is more specific to yourself now rather than the other artists. Do you ever kind of lapse into more traditional song form with anything that you do, or is if that's what happens, or do you ever consciously try and sort of like be more structured in the arrangement?
I'll certainly put structure in. I mean, some of what I do, especially the more experimental stuff with the modular, tend to be unstructured.
Right.
Well, even then, I'm trying to get. There's a couple of questions here, a couple of answers. I obviously don't write pop songs, which is probably just as well, and I certainly don't sing, which is definitely just as well. So I don't constrain things like that, but I do think structure is an important thing. I think I mentioned I've written a lot of production music over the years, and that's quite a good discipline because you've got to do tracks in 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes long. and it has to have an ending. Even the more abstract things I've done for DeWolf, it has to have an ending. And it's actually quite a good discipline to do a track that's 2.5 to 3 minutes long and try to say
And
what you need to say in that time,
and
rather than these big.
right, and has an ending rather than a fade out.
It has an ending. Don't fade. I very rarely fade out tracks.
Okay.
I might have a different sound at the end that fades out, but I don't tend to have a, like the typical pop song where it's still in full flow and then fades. That's to me a bit of a. Not a cheat's not the right word, but it doesn't work with what I do. But you've listened to Omicron, for example, the first track on Axiom, which you've heard. Now that's got a structure. And one of the things I wanted to do there was to get this beautiful thing to come out of almost chaotic chaos at the beginning. You've got these weird little rippling sounds at the beginning, and then there's a kind of grungy, almost distorted thing, and then it's actually these sequences come out, and it goes from kind of dark to light, and then it builds up, and then it comes back down again, back to those sounds. So that has a structure, has a form. I often draw shapes. So that's kind of got this kind of simple shape from down there, up and round. But sometimes you might want a double hump to a track if it's a longer track. I might have a quiet start. You get the first climax, then it kind of comes down, and then it goes up to a bigger climax, and then back down. So I think these shapes are important, but you don't have to have a shape. For example, the original Tone Science album. Why I say the original Tone Science album? Before I did this series, I did an album a few years ago, which I called Tone Science, where I used the big surge system, which you can see behind me, and I did these aleatoric compositions, which basically play themselves. The composition was actually the patch. I did it in such a way it would never repeat itself twice. You just let it drift. It wasn't just noise. It had scales, each one, and I recorded like half an hour's worth, and I didn't touch the patch. I just sat back. It just did its own thing. Now that's got no structure, and I just chopped the best 12 minutes out of each one and presented that as an album. So the 5 tracks literally have no structure. It's almost the antithesis of what I've just said.
Yeah, great.
But that suited that release.
Yeah.
But I would say most of the things I do give it a shape. Not only a track, but an album has a shape. So on Axiom, you've got Omicron's a very up track. The next track is even got more beats and there's a heavier feel. Then the next track's a little bit further down. The side 2 is quite interesting. The first track, Icon, is very loud and big and builds up, where the Fallen really comes right down. So after a big dramatic track, so it's quite nice to have a quieter track, is a rest from the big heavy track, almost the dynamics of that. The last track on Axiom almost reflects the feel of the first track. So I'm always thinking of these juxtapositions.
Nice.
Getting the track order correct in an album is very important, which is a slight aside, which is why on Bandcamp I made the decision to not allow any single tracks to be purchased on any of the albums. You have to buy the album.
Great.
You can make individual tracks. I'm not saying that's wrong, not at all. That's up to the individual. But I don't make any individual track. I've got no control on Spotify and iTunes, of course. You can there. But I believe an album is an album of music which needs to be experienced as a whole.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in the album. It does feel, sadly, though, that the album is is something that is receded in the past slightly. You're like,
know this.
No, we can let, Betamax be gone. Album, no.
To me, it's like buying a book and reading chapter 3 and then not bothering with the rest of the book.
Yeah. 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 Good analogy. So, Ian, I think we should have a little bit of music now, if you don't mind, because you've got some things.
The wonderful sound quality of Zoom.
I think we should give it a go. And
yeah, I've got a couple of things. They're just sort of work in progress.
Just
The
before,
100M.
just one moment before we go in there,
Okay.
our beards have had a shout out there, so I was just, so I thought maybe
My
it's the
beard was
elephant.
quite,
It is the elephant in the room, otherwise, isn't it? So,
Yes, well, I think you win. My beard was kind of getting to yours, but my partner she trimmed mine this morning. I thought I'm going to have a nice trim beard. I can't possibly compete with your beard.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I cut in with a triviality there where you were talking System 100. So I'm going to go full screen with you, Ian, and take it away.
Well, I'll explain a couple of things. This track, Omicron, which I've talked about, I've taken it from the door, Ableton Live, and I put it into a Hermod sequencer, which is going to play arpeggios and bass. And then some drum loops from the original track I've put into the microbit box and some sound effects, which are playing back as samples, just preparing for concerts where I want to be able to play a track, but be able to interact with the sequence line. So I'll play a little bit of that first, and then I'll maybe do some sound effects using the Anywhere rack over there. And this little strange box got down here. I'll just play for 2 or 3 minutes.
That box. We can look at that box afterwards.
This little thing here.
Oh, that thing, yeah. Don't show them. Let's build the intrigue.
Change my mind. I'll play this first.
Okay. It's kind of cutting out. Wow. I,
It kind of worked.
yeah, I tell you what, though, that Zoom was doing something really weird with the sound. There was some beautiful
Yeah, I
music
can
there.
imagine.
It was kind of doing like weird stuff. I should mention we have tried enabling a new mode in Zoom,
Mm,
which is high quality and stereo.
the not crap sound quality mode.
I I don't think, and we disable the kind of echo cancel, and also it's meant to disable the kind of Zoom compression thing. But it was making me think then how I would much rather the visual quality to drop, and like so
Yes.
the audio quality doesn't change. Like it's been going on actually throughout this conversation. Occasionally your voice just comes into beautiful focus and sounds kind of clear and bright, and then it kind of just sometimes it reduces in bandwidth, but they kind of they keep in the visual the same.
Yeah, I think I've noticed a couple of times. It's I've got obviously domestic I'm not using Wi-Fi, I'm using Ethernet, but even so, it's, I don't know why. Sometimes it just seems to drop. I need to find out a better way of getting a better signal. So maybe Zoom's got some kind of algorithm which says you haven't got enough bandwidth for stereo. So I mean, probably got some kind of idea. I mean, I went from very abstract.
Oh, it's lovely.
Very
yeah.
To not pop, but obviously a much more structured thing with arpeggios and bass line and some drum loops and then back again.
Yeah, it's super cool.
It wasn't. I mean, I'm stuck in the corner here, and I had to have me back to you, which is a little inelegant. I promise, if I do a streaming concert, it'll be better than that.
I know there was some kind of weird, like there were like some. I think it was like a streaming thing. Occasionally, there was some weird timing sort of things, as though you'd sort of like everything would gone slightly out of time. But it was.
Oh dear. Oh, well.
No, I know. Hey, this is what we're trying. But I am going to be searching for a better way to do things. Actually, Nick Batts made an interesting suggestion about you actually do an audio stream separately from the video stream. So you just kind of stream it through another piece of the audio. You create an audio portal, and then that audio portal doesn't do any kind of weird reduction. But thank you, Ian, though, for performing there, because I mean it's a super thrill. We were just trying to figure out if we could actually do this tonight with any kind of quality. But show us then that thing behind it. Yeah, that really odd thing. Can you just show us?
Odd things. There's the resident garden over there, which I was bowing with this thing.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting sound source. And then this little, it's called the X-Friend. It's a little handmade, a Polish guy hand makes these. And there's four keys, and each one has a little sensor. So I can change this, patch it with banana cables, and I've got it going through clouds just to add to the reverb and delay. It's there's something else to talk about here, perhaps based on that.
Mm-hmm.
None of the inputs and outputs have got any any indication of what they are. So there's a lot of serendipity with that. You just basically have to put things in. So no matter anybody with my experience or somebody just starting off, you've kind of got the same thing. You don't really know what it's going to do.
Right.
And that's kind of quite nice.
Yeah.
Because there is an element of serendipity with the electronic, these kind of synths, and that is, you'll be, I'm like anybody else. Sometimes I'm stumbling around. I'm thinking, well, does this sound like? Oh, it doesn't sound very good. So suddenly, ping!
Right.
It's a bit like that point. I always wonder why, when you're walking down the beach, why is it just one stone or one shell tweaks you, and you think, I like that one, but you've walked past thousands of others. But you have to walk past all those others to get to the one you like. So there's certainly an element of serendipity in this. So something like that is quite nice because you don't have a lot of control. You don't really know what it's going to do on any particular day. We're so used to computers and the reproducibility of what a computer can do. Now,
Yes.
don't get me wrong. Sometimes you need that.
Yeah.
Certainly, the production music stuff that I do, if they will phone me up and say that track you did 6 months ago, we need a different mix because a big client wants to use this, and I was to go, oh, I can't do that because it was just recorded off the modulars, they probably wouldn't be best pleased. I would need it to be in the door. I would need absolute reproducibility in that example, and that's absolutely fine. But a lot of the modular synths, once you've done something, record it for goodness sake, because you'll probably never get it back.
Yeah.
I never write patches down. It's pointless for me. It takes too long. I would get bored. It would take all the joy out of it. I kind of know how to get back to certain points, but there's certain patches which I would love to get back to, and I'm not going to get back to them.
Yeah.
But again, I also like these analogies about walks in the woods. Every time you have a walk in the woods, it's different. Why would you ever want it to be the same?
Yeah.
Every time is different. It depends on the season, the weather, who you're with, what you see. It's different every time. And it's a bit like that with modular and electronic music. And I actually see that as a real strong thing. And it kind of forces you to make a choice at the beginning when you're actually playing stuff, not 3 months later when you've mixed it to death in whatever door you've got and you're trying to change the automation just a tiny bit because it's going to make no difference whatsoever.
Yep, good. So I mean, that's a great analogy. And I think in my own experience with modular so far, it's been slightly frustrating for me in that the stuff where I really feel I've made some progress on, I then kind of think, oh right, okay, I'll pull all the cables out, I run my show, and then can I get back what I had? Not even close. It's too many variables.
It's not just a case of getting the patch back, it's getting you back to how you felt at that point in time.
Right.
And you might feel different that day.
Yeah.
So what's the point?
Yeah.
it's I think the modern day, it's part of the modern day part of life is the expectation that anything can be reproduced because computers can do this.
Right.
But real life's not like that.
Yeah.
Every day is different. No 2 days are exactly the same.
No walk in the woods is exactly the same.
Even if there's lockdown, it's no to every. I try to get with the dog every day with my partner for a walk. And every day is different when we take the dog for a walk. She'll run around in a different way. She'll catch the ball in a different way. The weather will be different. We'll meet different people talking. It's everything is different. I'm not interested. I like the one-off performance aspect of this. And that's why I said when you have a creative day, just record the whole lot because you never know, you might have a gem in there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've recently started doing that in my little setup, and I've made it so simple to do this now. So I've got no excuse. And I've been doing some quite long form jams, so sort of 40 minute long ones. So at some point in the future, I'm going to kind of start. I'm going to start to kind of go through that and pick bits out and stuff. But the way I've got things set up now is I've got my rig set up so Morphogene is constantly listening to the main mix. So at any point in time, I can pop stuff into Morphogene, which you can use Morphogene as a tape recorder, albeit for 2.9.
Very good. I don't actually have one. It's one of the modules I don't have.
It's probably the module I had the most gas for. That I really kind of really wanted, and
it's very good. I've seen it in use. It's very good.
Yeah.
I just never got round to it, and I've got enough things behind me to
well, I've been umming and ahhing about. I love tape. I love working with tape. I was fortunate enough when I went to like an engineering college to sort of learn my craft on tape and on mixing desk and splicing tape as well. And
I did all that. There's a really weird little side story here. I've got a big box of cassettes going all the way back to my days at Spectral, So this is probably a cassette from 1979 or 1980.
Wow.
It still worked just about, and had a recording of me playing a string synthesizer through some echo machine, tape echo, and then what I've done on the tape, which I've recorded, is put the tape to half speed, and I could actually hear when I did that. So it's going there, so it drops an octave, but it doesn't just drop an octave. It actually goes under the octave and then bounces back up again. It's like an inertia to it,
yeah.
or momentum, I should say.
Yeah.
I thought that was something that I physically changed the speed on the tape recorder.
Wow.
All those years ago, and I've got a recording on cassette, and it sounds great. I haven't got any plugin that would actually do that.
Right.
Quite the way it sounded.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think I was mentioning that about Morphogene just in that I think I've always fantasized about a kind of, like a music concrete sort of chopping up bits of tape and rearranging little splinters of tape, and I've tried to do that with Ableton Live and Machine and various other kind of things, but I'm actually finding that Morphogene is the one for getting that thing. I remember listening to old Frank Zappa recordings, Lumpy Gravy and that, the Mothers of Invention stuff. Actually, that's his first solo one, where there's just lots of little tape edits and and things like that. Sorry, I digress. Anyway, that's me. That's something that's
fine. This is the path we're taking tonight. Remember, this is a unique interview. Even if we did the interview another day, it will not be the same.
Absolutely. But I think we're probably just about in the final stage now. So I think let's just talk about what people can look forward to from you in the near future, and if there's anything that you can tell us. So the big news is Axiom is out then on Friday. So
it's out now on my Bandcamp page, right. But it will be available from all those other streaming platforms, etc. Plus stores. I mean, places like Bleep and Norman Records, and those quite well-known record stores. They should have it in stock. There's a guy in the States. It's horrible, expensive postage to the States now. If you want to buy it, if you're listening in the States, there's a link on my Bandcamp site to it's Blue Tech. He's got some stock in the States just to keep the postage for people down. So that's obviously my main focus is Axiom at the minute. There will be another Din album in January, but I'm not going to tell you yet what it is because I haven't made any announcement.
Okay.
And there's another album which I've done, which is with Marcus Reuter, the German touch guitarist, and that'll be out next year. Working on the Tone Science album, Tone Science 5, just about got all the tracks in for that, so that'll be out next year. It's getting quite difficult to plan things, especially on vinyl, because with obviously the pandemic plus the massive increase in vinyl, you have really, really long lead-in times now. I mean, the vinyl for Axiom, this one which I flashed up before, I actually got that away to the pressing plant in June or July, I think. And it's just come out now, and I just got it just in time. They're now quoting some pressing plants up to 10 weeks or to 12 weeks after you get the test pressing.
Wow.
It's getting quite difficult to plan that far ahead. And I'm kind of old-fashioned. I don't really go in for all this pre-sale. I quite like to have the physical items that I'm going to sell, this case CD and vinyl, ready on the day when it's released. A lot of people don't do that now. They have pre-sales, and that's fine. But I kind of quite like it being there and it's just ready to go.
Yeah, nice.
But it's getting hard to plan that far ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the fact that you are doing like vinyl releases, physical releases, full stop. But I've really enjoyed. Recently I got a great album from I got it here, hang on.
What could it be, folks? What could it be?
It's Mert, and the album's called Greed, and Mert is the name of I think is the chap behind Chaos Devices, or
All right.
Zachos. But I think maybe in part why I've liked this is when you listen on vinyl and with the kind of crack and spittle that vinyl brings to the table, it sort of does something to take things even further away from the digital domain. Oh, sorry, I should hold. I realised I hadn't. I held the post. I held it up in the wrong quadrant. No, yes, that's the album.
There we are. I can see it.
Agreed. Just how nice electronic music sounds on vinyl. I think it sounds.
It can sound really. It's particularly the bass. I think that you get a lovely. I use Moogs a lot for bass. I don't know what it is about Moogs, but if you want a lovely low bass, it just does the job. It just sits there in the mix, not too loud, not too quiet. It just has that weight.
Yeah.
Vinyl is one of those things. Again, you either get it or you don't. If you like vinyl, you love vinyl. It's neither better nor worse than anything else. You could argue a CD is closer to the actual sound of the music in my studio. But if I want to get all poetic, perhaps vinyl's closer to the soul of the music I produce.
It certainly feels like
you and I are of an age group where when I was young at school, it was a highlight when one of your friends bought an album. I was into Focus, the Dutch band Focus. When I was to buy a Focus album, we'd pile around to my friend's house, and his brother had a really good hi-fi, and we'd put on Hamburger Concerto or Focus Free or whatever, and we would just sit quietly and listen to the whole thing. Then we would get cups of tea and sandwiches and then we'd all talk about it and we'd put it on again. We'd look at the back and it was great. It was enough.
Yes.
It was enough for us just to do that for an evening. And I'm not sure that many people do that now because there's so many other things vying for your attention.
Yeah.
To sit down and listen to an album, people say, well, doesn't it get on your nerves? You have to stand up and walk to the turntable to turn it over. And I'm like, no. How you got legs? How lazy can you be?
I think that's the thing, though, isn't it? That like 18 to 20 minute kind of period is just the right amount of time for a sit down.
Yeah.
You know, it's about a single cup of tea's worth, isn't it? A side of
a couple of digestives. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just looking at the time. I think we'll wrap things up now. Just so I think it feels like that's especially with the mention of digestive biscuits. It's just given me a little craving. But Ian, thank you ever so much for coming on the show today. It's a real pleasure, and I've enjoyed it so much. And I know the audience has too.
It's been good crack, as they say.
Really good crack, yeah. So yes, well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We've had a great chat room. Lots of people, lots of conversation. I've tried to keep in mind. I typically read the chat later, so I apologise. Oh, I should give the chat room the opportunity to ask a question, though, if anyone has got a question. But we'll let's keep this short, though. So if a question comes in the next minute, then we'll go for it. Otherwise, we'll cut. So yes. So if people are thanking you, Ian, for coming on the show. So yes, and echoing my sentiments. Okay. I'm gonna probably, unless a question comes in, I think we'll probably. Someone saying, why isn't the show an hour longer? I should probably work out a way of doing questions, like sort of suggesting in Twitter or something before, so people can tweet me questions to ask. That would be a good idea. Okay, so I think okay, guys. Thank you, chat roomy. Thank you everybody for tuning in live, but most certainly, Ian, thank you ever so much for joining us. And please, everybody, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and clicking that like button. Look, I'm trying to do this thing now, and that bell icon as well. You know that
very
thing.
Important.
It's all. Man. God, I'm gonna maybe come up with an animation or something. I really struggle with that part of the live stream. But okay, everybody, take care, be safe, Spread the love. Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye-bye.